Welcome to B-Flow Sessions, the podcast where we help you find and stay in the flow on the water and in life. I'm your host, Brad Burton. Join me as I sit down with paddlers, athletes, and adventurers who are all seeking the flow. B-Flow Sessions is brought to you by our friends at Pucon Kayak Retreat. Are you dreaming of a Chilean whitewater escape this winter? Picture turquoise rapids, warm sunny days, and world-class rivers for every skill level, all based out of a riverside retreat built by paddlers for paddlers. If that sounds like your kind of winter, then Pucon Kayak Retreat is the place. To learn more or to book your dream kayak trip, reach out to me directly at bflowkayak@gmail.com and I'll help you get connected. B-Flow Sessions is powered by Dagger Kayaks. Wherever there's water, Dagger Kayaks will help you find your flow. Team-tested, paddler-proven designs for all paddlers and all water. And thanks to our partners at Sawyer Paddles, Stohlquist PFDs, and Level 6 Gear for keeping us in the flow. Welcome to the next episode of B-Flow Sessions. As always, I'm your host, Brad Burton, and I am really thrilled to be joined by our host today, a man who has designed a lot of the boats that you all out there at paddling. If anybody's looking, he's the man who designed the one behind me, and a lot of the boats that I've paddled. Snowy Robertson, how's it going, Snowy?
It's doing well. Yeah, thanks very much for having me on, Brad. Nice to reconnect.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Snowy and I have known each other for over 20 years. He was coming into Dagger as the chief designer as I was kind of leaving the sport, but we've always stayed in touch, and somebody I really admire as a kayaker and a designer, and we're going to hear all about it. And he's going to take us through a lot of the designs that he's created for Dagger, and his paddling career coming to us. He's currently in the United States, but originally from the UK. But again, just so thankful to have you on the show. So tell us, how did you find your flow in kayaking?
Yeah, I guess I sort of got into my first kayak probably sort of 1985-ish maybe. So my dad got my brother and I started. We were quite young, and I'm probably around about 8-ish, I suppose, about that time. And my brother's a couple of years older than me. But my dad was running a kayaking course at a local college that he was involved in, and they actually made their first kayaks out of fiberglass. So he and a colleague made these kayaks so they could take the students out, and so my dad got into paddling that way, and then introduced my brother and I to it, and we sort of I think it was a sort of slow start for us. We sort of got into it sort of gradually, and yeah, I got my sort of dad to thank for that, and parents were like super supportive around sort of paddling. But within the UK, a lot of clubs and quite a big club scene, and so we were part of a couple of clubs then from that point forwards. And then sort of the slalom side of things was also really, really influential, and a sort of a big part of my sort of beginning roots in paddling. So we'd go off to different slalom events, and my brother would go to one at a different sort of division at a different location, and my mum would take me to another one, and sort of vice versa. And we'd go as families to these slalom events. There's a really sort of big community around slalom, and I always remember, you get to the end of like a slalom year, and you weren't sure like if you're going to move up a division or down to a division, and you'd sort of wait for this slalom yearbook to come through, and you'd sort of like open it, and you sort of like find yourself in there, and it was like super exciting to see how you'd sort of you'd ended up. But slalom was a big part of that, and then slowly started to sort of move away from the sort of discipline of slalom, I suppose, and sort of to train hard for something, and sort of the amount of time you spent on the water, and found ourselves just playing around in our slalom boats and doing sort of stern squirts and tailies and enders and breaking our kayaks, and then realizing that maybe we moved towards sort of rodeo as it maybe was then, and freestyle. Just got lots of sort of thank for my sort of parents. We spent a lot of time sort of West Wales and going surfing on the ocean, and sort of getting out and about, and that's how we kind of got into it.
And for you, I mean, design and creating things within the industry has always been a big part. I mean, you've been designing product for companies for well over 20 years. how did you find your flow and find that passion for design and engineering and coming up with ideas?
Yeah. So I was always interested in how things were made and how, sort of tinkering around with things, and particularly with like my mountain bikes and bikes back home. I'd take everything apart and work out how it's working, put it all back together, and was always interested in that side of things and just being, I guess, sort of creative and just sort of interested in sort of how things sort of come to be, and so sort of studied through sort of high school and was interested in design technology, and then moved that into a design degree. So studied in industrial design, and all this time was paddling, moving from sort of out of slalom into sort of freestyle. And so while I was at university, we'd go to do the sort of freestyle circuit and go to events in the UK and then to Europe as well. And yeah, just studied design. And when I finished that, I wasn't certain whether I wanted to take that in sort of a pure design route and sort of design products, whatever it might be. But I wasn't so interested in just designing another, kettle or hairdryer, or just sort of more consumer products. And that's what I was sort of trained to do. But in a way, it's just like I'd like to sort of apply this somewhere else and not make more just stuff. And was really fortunate that I'd always been paddling Pyranha boats, or predominantly been paddling Pyranha boats as a UK brand. And my brother was a sponsored paddle with Pyranha and was competing for them, and also working sort of on the road doing sort of field marketing and some different bits and pieces there. And they were looking to someone to sort of add to their design team, and so I had the opportunity to sort of go and start there. I think actually before I even worked there, I went to sort of Pyranha one day and sort of got roped into like helping load or unload a container, and sort of got involved in just moving boats around the factory. I was like, oh look, it looks like I'm already working here. I don't think I was getting paid for it then, but I was just doing something. Just got pulled in, and then had the really sort of honoured to have the opportunity to go and sort of start working at Pyranha, and so working there kind of under the eye of Graham Mackrith, the sort of founder owner, and still sort of heavily involved in all the products and all the decisions, and then Jason Buxton as well was the designer there as well, and Bob Campbell and the whole crew of people who were sort of, it was really a sort of paddler involved. It's a home sort of grown company, and had a sort of great experience there, and sort of cut my teeth in hand shaping. It was very sort of hands-on, and applying sort of design sort of from a aesthetic standpoint and also performance, and then just learning how boats work a lot more. And so really fortunate for that opportunity, and did that for just about 3 years. I was with Pyranha. So applying design into sort of something that I love doing, and I was like, this is brilliant, and started to realize how much I like the people of the industry as well. I mean, I interacted with them a lot, but just I think it's the people in the industry that have kept me so grounded with it.
It really is unique, the people. I've commented on the podcast about how welcoming everybody's been to me. Like just take 20 years off and then just call people back up like, hey, I'm returning to the sport. It's like, come on, love to have you. I mean, you don't find that in other industries. Doing the freestyle tour again this spring, like it's so like you're out there competing. Now, granted, I'm competing in the Masters division, so it's not like cutthroat, and there's not millions of dollars even for the pros. But everybody's just like, hey, great job, that's awesome. And I've been spending my last 20 years coaching basketball, and it's very much a thing where if you're not on our staff, like we want everybody else to lose. It's so much more cutthroat. And where this whole, whether it's freestyle or creaking or the industry side, people are so warm and welcoming and friendly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's just so important to maintain. Obviously involved in the business side of things, and it is business, and everyone's trying to sort of not win necessarily, but do their best and sort of achieve what they can, and obviously bring best products to market is what I like to focus on. But there's obviously involved in that is making some form of profit that you can then turn that into the next product and keep that cycle going.
Sure.
But I certainly, it's been interesting sort of working with different kind of different branches of sort of who Dagger's been owned by over the years, and having seen people kind of come into the business from not at all from sort of paddle sports, and certainly not even from the outdoor industry, and bringing sort of different skills to the marketplace, but just being kind of completely sort of blown away by how, as a competitive industry, we all interact. I mean, you should get along with, you'll go and have a beer after an event or after a show or whatever it is with someone from this brand and that brand, but you're all interacting, you're all kayakers at the end of the day, and that's what brings us together. And to see people's reactions who sort of haven't been used to that or don't get that in a way, it's really interesting. They're like, wait, you can speak to those people? You're allowed to do that? It's like, yeah, absolutely. It's like part of what we do, because we've got this sort of common bond, I suppose, and that's the people, is one of the biggest reasons for me. It's just great, and sort of lifelong friendships, and yeah.
Well, talk to us about some of the iconic products that you have had major input and design behind, maybe even at Piranha, but certainly through Dagger, some of those iconic boats that there's probably in people's garages on top of people's cars, or maybe they're driving to the river right now to go paddle one of them. What are some of the designs we can thank you for?
I've just been sort of really fortunate to got involved with the Piranha products, and then sort of first kind of time in 2003 moving to the US and worked under Mark Lyle, the sort of lead designer at the time there, and that was wonderful just to just learn how the process that he applied to things, and just his knowledge and just ability as a paddler, and how he applied that into like what works, what doesn't work, and sort of how he built up this sort of understanding of, as a paddler, but also then as how that goes into the shapes and the functions of the boat. And I know he, prior to that, worked alongside one of the Dagger founders with Steve Scarborough, and definitely had an opportunity to certainly talk products and design with Steve a little bit. He was sort of transitioned out when I was coming in, but where paths crossed a little bit. So very fortunate to have sort of started and sort of worked with those people. And so from 2003 onwards, probably the first Dagger boat I'd have got at all involved in would have been the original Nomad. So that was in I think its early phase prototype, so got a little bit of involvement with that, and certainly discussed some of the sort of the safety features of that product and some of the aesthetics and sort of styling, and bringing sort of some ideas into the mix there, but certainly under the watchful eye of Mark Lyle and then the team. I think that's one thing I've always kind of understood the power of is that I'm a paddler myself through and through, but not doing it at the high level that our team are certainly not now, and probably never really have been. But understanding, listening to people and saying, well, what do you want? And
sure.
If someone's feeling something in a product, they've got a sort of a reason for that. And so I think that's really powerful. But anyway, kind of going off course a little bit. So yeah, from really the sort of original Nomad onwards, if it's a Dagger boat, I've been involved with it really. So I think then Mark left around the time, probably the first boat I did from start to finish on my own would have been the Axiom, I think. I say on my own again with the team, but sort of leading the sort of design initiative of that boat. And we then started moving more into sort of the CAD design as well, and sort of using the sort of the so I guess sort of technology of that to sort of help speed some things up, and also just have somewhat of repeatability and have some data, and so that's always been something that sort of has interested me, but and then applying that into, you can see a shape on a screen, but like what's it really going to look like when you get it into full size scale, and then what it's going to test out like. So yeah, that let me sort of apply some of that industrial design knowledge. But yeah, Dagger boats from sort of Axiom onwards, but sort of 2003 to present day. So yeah, latest boat we probably put to market would have been the Indra, and so anything like the Vanguard, collaborating with various paddlers on things like the Green Boat, Pat Keller and Andrew Holcomb, Chris Gratmans, Corey Volt, Ken Hovey, the list goes on with that boat, and that was a wonderful project working with Pat on that, and just sort of those team collaborations are really powerful, so that was great.
And nothing happens in a vacuum or by itself, and a lot of this is just kind of like I've talked about this. I can't remember with like EJ or Shane or Corin, I can't remember, but like, do the designs push what people are doing, or do what people are doing and asking for push the designs? like I said before, I left the sport for 20 years, but always kept keeping a watchful eye on the trends of the sport through social media. And it almost seemed like from about 2005 to 2016, 17, almost like a dark ages. It was like everybody was in creek boats, which obviously if you need one, that's great. But like going to the Nantahala and everybody's in a creek boat and a full face helmet. But then things started evolving with the half slices, and then this baby behind me, the Nova, really took the world by storm, or kind of bringing back full slicing again. Talk to us about that evolution that you've seen in that 20 years that you've been with Dagger. How the different trends, and do you think it's been product design push or what people want to do push?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think there's quite a lot of these evolutionary sort of trends, and so things will sort of go around. Although it seems like a new category, if you look back, there's probably something existed quite a long way back that it was quite similar to, and obviously
Sure.
new styles, new sort of knowledge to those features, and new sort of abilities of the paddlers. There's no doubt that our team are just sort of well, not just a team, just the high-end sort of high-performing paddlers in general are just stepping up and just really pushing the limits of what can be done. And instead of just running a drop in a normal way and making it down, now it's like some of the sort of downriver freestyle thing people are doing.
Right.
It's just blows my mind, and that's really inspiring then as a designer to say, like, okay, well, how do we assist with that? How do we what's the team looking for? And so I think it's really powerful just making sure you're listening to that team, especially as I sort of, not paddling at that sort of same level at all, but just sort of understanding, well, why do they want that, and what's that person feeling in that product, and how do we take what they're telling you and sort of transition that into sort of a usable product as well, but then not losing sight of the fact that these product have to sell, and so you could make something. There's certain paddlers out there, you could give them, Dane Jacksons of this world, give them a hollowed out log and they'll make it look good.
Right.
But then sort of mere mortals, have to make something that sort of performs in everyone's hands. And I think listening to all those aspects and saying, well, that's great over here, but how's that going to apply over here? Because it does all, to an extent, become a compromise. So you have to say, well, that's going to work really well in this scenario, but it's not going to work great over here. And so I think the paddlers are sort of what they're asking for is driving a lot. But then listening to that and saying, okay, how do we take that to the next level? How do we go past what they're asking for and really sort of push it? And I still think the one thing that I sort of say it, and we haven't come up with the solutions. We haven't sort of really sort of dug into it, but I think materials technology has got to be the next area that we move on, because it's not that we've plateaued entirely with design, but if you look at it, there's like nothing entirely revolutionary happening, right?
Sure.
So that planing hull occurred, and that's sort of fantastic for the sport, and then sort of it's been a case of moving around shapes and volumes and putting those volumes in different places, and that creates a different experience and a different way of going down the river safely or in a playful manner or whatever it might be. But kayaks they're not super light. They're strong. They're very purposeful for what they do. They're incredibly strong, really. If you took the sort of bike industry and you sort of take a bike off some of the things that we would sort of similar to do with paddling and sort of destroy it and turn around and ask for a new one, the answer would be like, no, you're not going to get that. But in kayaks, it's like, yeah, okay, we'll sort of warranty those boats in some cases. But I feel like materials technology has got to be the next battlefield, I think.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, like in the last 20 years, specifically for like river running boats, I mean, obviously there's been things like the Nova and Jackson with freestyle boats taking things to a different level. But if you just look at like a traditional river running boat, whether it's a creek boat or a half slice, a lot of the technology has been put into, or the like research and design into making the boats super comfortable and safe.
Yeah.
With the outfitting improvements.
Yeah.
And then also, tremendous amounts of bow rocker, which 20 years ago may have been scoffed at and would have said, no, that's going to make the boat extremely slow. Can you talk about kind of the design principles that goes into like a boat like the Indra with so much bow rocker? I mean, even the rewind compared to the RPM.
Yeah.
How you create speed through waterline, but also making the boat incredibly maneuverable and obviously being able to go over things with bow rocker.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think things like that sort of progression of boats, sort of the high rockered, sort of sporty creekers, let's call them. There's lots of great products out there for that, and it's just a different way of running rivers. I mean, if you look at the sort of style, you go from sort of coming off a drop and just doing the sort of Burning Man or T-Bird, and that's how you'd run a waterfall, to then it's like, okay, people are going to start sort of boofing these drops and sort of landing differently, and then the higher they got, you can't run a drop like that, risk of back injury, so techniques changed then. And then it was a case of like, well, sort of the sort of more of a dense boat theory, you're going to sort of plug through stuff, is like, what's wrong with staying on the surface? What's wrong with just keeping the bow high and dry? And so the rocker started creeping up with that, and still not sure if we found the ceiling of that, but there are some drawbacks to it. Is when the boat rears up and you literally can't see around it, and you're planing out of a drop, then maybe there's too much bow rocker. But yeah, and so just the different style, again, the sort of team saying, well, we don't want to, it's not that getting the face wet, but we want to be on the surface, we don't want to be in the water as much, and that floaty kind of hovercrafty feeling, I suppose. And there's all sort of products along the way. It can be credited with starting some of that, and then someone picks up with it and sort of runs with it. But there is that sort of evolutionary sort of process. But yeah, I think I still come back to, and I don't know if all designers would agree with this necessarily, but you just have to look at the compromise. It's like, okay, you put all this rocker in there, you still want the boat to be relatively compact, because then the longer it is, the heavier it is, there's more it's going to hang up on stuff, and so it might work well in the Pacific Northwest, but not great in the Southeast or on steep creeks. Good. So you're just sort of picking some pieces and saying, well, how much of this? And it's not that you put a score of like 1 out of 10, saying, well, it has to be 10 on speed and 5 on maneuverability, but you are sort of balancing those features out and deciding where you're going to compromise a little bit, and not trying to sort of make it too sort of muddied and muddled up and just sort of run middle of the road and just become something of nothing. So yeah, sort of something like the Indro is a case of the boats out there that are already doing that, but every brand sort of has its take on it and its spin on it, and it was a case of you sort of look what sort of Dagger's done before and what other sort of companies might be doing, and sort of find where it works for us, and then it's a case of put it in the team's hand, and they're like, oh yeah, we really like this, but this didn't work for us here, and you learn things that are not only performance related but also structural. Like we learned some stuff that we tried on the Indro, was like, okay, that's great, but if we take this boat to market as it is, we're probably going to get a ton of warranties with some of the sort of tail features we built in there. So we sort of had to alter the design to, again, design for manufacture within the materials we're using. So it's it becomes a trade-off. It really does.
Let's go back to your own personal paddling now, and one of the questions we ask people is perfect flow. Talk to us about a time when you were out on the river and it was just the most perfect day, or maybe you did something epic and you just like, you look back and it's like, man, I can't believe I did that.
Yeah. Tricky to narrow that down to one, but there's definitely one experience that really sort of sticks in my head is actually the first time I ever ran Gorilla here on the green was it was on my birthday. It was like a dawn patrol with a group of paddlers, but certainly with my really good friend Corey Vault, and who's I'm sure you know. And I hadn't run Gorilla before. I was in a green boat as well, and I was just like feeling really good in the boat. It's like, why not? Can I've used the theory that Andrew Holcomb said, it's like, get low and let the big boat do the work, and it just felt really great that day. And it was my birthday, kind of sun was coming up, and Corey just kind of looked at me, he's like, I'll see you down the below, and I was like, yes, today's the day. And that was just like everything kind of aligned sort of in that moment, and it was just like pretty stoked about it. So having the success of that boat and actually being able to get that boat to market was one of the sort of paddling one of the early versions, and taking something that was very much as a team-driven product and actually being able to sort of make it a reality was pretty rewarding with that product. And then to have it there on that day and paddle it on the sort of namesake river that we named it after, and off that sort of iconic rapid was was a pretty cool feeling. There's quite a few other sort of thoughts I've got for products. Actually, just last year I was working on product in the UK with Palm, and so to do some design work with the guys at Palm and Dagger Europe as well, and we partnered with a surf kayak brand over there who makes some incredible high performance surf kayaks with Hobson kayaks. Beautiful piece of construction, and so we did a plastic version of one of their boats, and so we took that design and sort of made it manufacturable for plastic, and there was quite a lot sort of involved in it, and there sort of involved from the start to finish of getting it into production, and just been working some really long hours, some late nights, and my brother came down, we picked the boats up, sort of drove to this tidal race, it's called the Bitches tidal race in Pembrokeshire, and drove that night, got there and got up at sort of dawn patrol, paddled out, and sort of the sun was coming up, there were porpoises, and paddling this boat that we hadn't put on the water before, not in plastic, and again it all sort of connected and clicked, and I'm not saying sort of every project's like that. There's definitely some where it's been like, oh, that didn't work out, and sort of back to the drawing board, but that was one of those perfect flow moments as well.
What about, I call it flood, what about a time when things did not go too well and maybe out of control, or something happened that you're like, well, that didn't go right, but it's a good story to tell?
Thankfully nothing sort of, I suppose, very thankfully, so nothing too catastrophic, but I actually probably back to the green as well, so it's got a lot of time on that river, even though it's sort of a transplant to the southeast, it's just been a very special place. But actually the very first time I paddled the green didn't work out as well as I'd hoped. It's sort of, that river was always on this sort of pedestal for me, and so it took me a while to I came from a more freestyle background in the UK. We're still paddling and some creeking and river running, but it wasn't really sort of my thing, and so jumped on the green for my first time with a sort of cool crew from the Pyranha crew that I knew then, so Dinver McClure, I think Scott Sullivan was there, I don't remember exactly all the people, but Leland Davis maybe, but a pretty cool crew of people and who've got a lot of time on that river, and
sure.
I remember I for some reason I decided to take a G ride because that's a little bit what I was used to. I remember arriving at the sort of the Puddin, walking down, sort of pretty nervous, and then bumping into Woody Calloway, and he's just like, Snowy, do Dagger not make any bigger boats for you to paddle? And I was like, I've made a wrong decision here. When you've got sort of like Woody telling you that, so maybe I was sort of doomed from the start. But no, it was going okay till Zwicks, and I for some reason I was like running last boat. I don't know why I was in the back, but everyone just bombed and gave me some like pretty good beta, but I didn't follow it well and just got stuck in the bottom hole there. And I remember sort of them saying like, if you come out your boat here, just like swim really hard for the bank. And so sure enough, I just got worked and swam, and off my boat went sort of through the sort of fully waterlogged, through Gorilla, through the slide, just got like completely mashed up, got a hole in it, and got all the stuff together. I lost my paddle, I never did find that. And yeah, I just got my shit back together, and I think I remember borrowing a paddle off, was it Eric Neese maybe? You saw someone, I didn't actually know who it was at the time, and they were like, oh yeah, that's who that is. And so my first green experience was not the best, but it didn't sort of put me off. I sort of got back on it, and sort of learned some things.
Well, that's really cool that one of the most memorable, like, kind of bad experiences and one of your most memorable, amazing experiences happened on the same river.
Yeah. It's there's lots of sort of stories from that run, but yeah, another sort of low flow moment. It wasn't terrible, but last year for my brother's 50th, we decided to do this little sort of epic adventure. We sort of hiked our kayaks. Well, they were sort of packraft kayaks, but kind of over this mountain pass in Scotland, sort of 8 or so miles in, up to the snow line, just to try and paddle a river out. And this was on his 50th birthday. He's like, let's go for an adventure. Anyway, we get up there, only to find there was no water in the river. So we'd like hiked all this stuff in our dry suits and through the sort of Scottish bogs and sort of snow line. And so we were like, well, I guess we're just hiking all the way around and back out. So we did 19 miles carrying all our stuff on his 50th birthday. We had some good whiskey for the trips, that helped. But that was it wasn't low flow. We kept the spirits high, literally. But it was some type 2 fun in the end. But that's just how kayaking is. There was an adventure at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's always going to be either some good stories to tell or good fun to be had, and
Yeah,
hopefully both. So,
yeah.
and always good people for sure.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. That's it.
Let's eddy out and take a quick break. Do you need a break from the cold of a North American winter? Then let's head south to the best whitewater on earth at Pucon Kayak Retreat. Email me at bflowkayak@gmail.com to learn more about how you can take the ultimate paddling adventure in the heart of Chile. Now let's peel out and head downstream. What I want to talk about advice now and think about just general kayaking advice for a beginner,
Yeah.
and somebody who's older and maybe took some time off. It looks like there's a lot of people returning to the sport now who are in their middle ages, but maybe took some time away. So, what advice would you have for those two groups of people?
Yeah. I guess for a beginner standpoint, and I don't know if it sounds obvious, but get some instruction. I think if as I look at other sports that I've sort of done or tried, and sort of like, well, I think I know what to do here, but like getting good instruction is like, it's so valuable, and I think it sort of sets you on the right path. And even though your friends who might have friends who come from another sport as a beginner, and you know them from another arena, and they're like, oh, I can show you how to do this. That's all well and good, but and some of those might be good instructors and might be versed in it, and that's fine. But just getting it from another perspective, and just getting it from a sort of a known coach, and someone who's it's their expertise to really sort of understand what you're doing and break it down, and help you and bring value. I think that'll set you on the right path, definitely. I think also just not comparing yourself to others coming into the sport, and not sort of having this like, oh, this is looking at like, this is the steps and this is the route that you've got to do to get to it. And I think I witnessed that in the States. It's like, okay, these are the stepping stones. By sort of these times I should be doing this, and sort of and making these sort of progressions. And like, that comparison is just it's not fair to yourself, and it's not really right. It's like, you might move faster, you might move slower, but making sure you're having fun while you're doing that, and that's just absolutely key. It's just like class fun. It's just enjoy it, and maybe trying to look at variety in what you're doing. It's like, although sort of course, just getting on a river and just running the river, but just sort of just find variety in it, and it keeps it really fresh. And then I think also, just like I notice here, as people sort of start to progress a bit more, is just like maybe sort of obsessing over water levels a little bit, and sort of like, and I think the sort of gauges are a wonderful addition to the sport, and didn't have that when I sort of was starting out, and it was either high or low, or like really high, but not sort of overthinking. It's like, oh, this is like, it's going to be 6 on the gauge, and therefore it's this and this. It's like, it's typically going to be pretty similar, and if you're with the right crew and people looking out for you, you'll be okay. So just like, don't sort of obsess over that, maybe. And I think for people coming back into the sport is just try some of the new products that's out there. I mean, there's great products from the past, but there's like lots of really good new technology, and that's not just in boats. That's in sort of paddles and gear, and just the comfort and the breathability of dry suits, and the comfort of PFDs. I think things like that have all sort of stepped forward, and they just make that experience that much better. So just getting sort of trying out new equipment and having an open mind, and then also don't look back on what you could do. Don't be like, I used to be able to do that. So like, that doesn't matter. It's just where are you now? So meet yourself where you are, and challenge yourself in come down a grade and challenge yourself in that environment, and don't worry about what you used to be able to do. Just kind of get on the water and again keep it fun.
Absolutely. Well, now talk to us about what you're currently doing with kayaking, and kind of where you see downstream going, your future in the sport.
Well, at this point, I'll just spill the beans on all the new designs we're working on, right?
Oh yeah, sure, yeah. No, I didn't mean that. I meant you personally. Yeah. I'm not trying to get you to divulge company secrets.
Oh no, nothing like that. No. Always doing something new though. So you think like just me personally, like where I'm?
Yeah.
I think for me, come back to that sort of variety thing. I've always enjoyed different sides of the sport, and I'd sort of being in the southeast, do a bit more creeking here, but I always enjoy play boating, sort of wave surfing, just the feeling of a hull on a sort of a river wave or an ocean wave as well. And so grew up doing a lot of sort of ocean surfing, and so I think having that variety is really important to me. And then also just maybe sort of diversifying that into multi-sports as well. I enjoy biking. Really enjoying board surfing and ocean wave surfing, and so that also just gets me thinking as the designer. It's like, oh, what's the technology going on here? You know, how's this thing generating all this speed, and how can we apply some of those theories as well? And so, and also, you know, doing something that I'm not great at, although I've surfed for a long time. I just sort of dip in and out of it, and yeah, the ocean can be a super humbling place. And so I think just for me, keeping that variety. Kind of realizing that none of us are getting any younger, but just trying to not keep up with the kids at all, but just trying to stay current and understand like what's happening, what's evolving, and then also with sort of technology and things that we're using for design, just trying to stay on top of some of the software we're using for designing products, and you know, there's no substitutes for taking sort of, I guess, sort of leveraging our learning from a design and bringing that into from the physical form, but then what software can we use to sort of help sort of parts of the process, and yeah, just continue to learn. I always like to see how things are made and just look at other industries and like how are they doing something over here, and then how could that be applied to kayaking. So yeah, for me the stoke is still there. It's just really sort of present, and I just like I like sort of creating, and whenever I get a chance to do that, anything within sort of paddle sports, really. It doesn't have to necessarily be a boat. I'm sort of involved in some other aspects, and yeah, just making things that when you see a consumer using a product in a certain way, and they're enjoying that experience, that's sort of super rewarding, and yeah, continuing to sort of chase that for me is important.
I mean, that's got to make you feel good. Like you show up at the Akoi and you look around the eddy and you see boats that you designed. I mean, do you ever in your back of your mind going, yeah, I made that?
Yeah, I suppose you probably always do, but I'm always just sort of asking people sort of quietly, if you don't know them especially, it's just like, you know, what do you like, what do you not like? And usually it's like, I prefer to know like what do you not like, because that's where we've got room to improve. And yeah, but it is immensely rewarding just when you just see someone enjoying it. It's not a product of necessity, of course. Like, these are things that people choose to spend hard-earned money on, you know, for their leisure time, and they could spend that in so many different ways. But to see all the pieces coming together and someone is using all these different products in the way they were sort of intended, or in other ways, and just like, oh, I never really thought you would do that in that style, and with that boat or with that piece of kit. Yeah, it is rewarding for sure. I enjoy that side of it.
Our Pucon Kayak Retreat Pro Flow hot tip here. If somebody I asked Joe Pulliam if somebody wanted to go into the business side of paddle sports. But I want to ask you if somebody wanted to go into the design side of paddle sports, whether that was boats or paddles or kit, whatever the case may be. If someone wanted to get into design, certainly they could make more money designing iPhones or cars, but that, you know, just like you, but the passion resides in the paddle sports. If somebody wanted to get into that, what would be your pro hot tip for them to follow that passion?
Yeah, it's good, really good question. I think having a sort of passion for sort of how things are made, how they're sort of being able to manufacture, having this sort of creative mindset is one thing, and I think that's sort of super important. But then also just knowing how to be able to bring that to market, and sort of being sort of fully able to sort of take something from start to finish all the way through, I think is really powerful. And so I think for that sort of a design engineering background is helpful. Certainly engineering, I think it's just. I think there's a practicality in that, and just being able to say, well, yeah, that's great, it looks great on paper, but how are we going to make that, or how's that going to perform? And so engineering can start to put aside to that. And I'm not an engineer at all by trade. I sort of know enough to be dangerous and kind of put an engineering hat on. But, you know, nowadays, fortunate, it wasn't the case sort of back when I started. You know, we tried to be engineers and probably did the job okay, but now work alongside engineers, and it's great to sort of collaborate with them with a sort of crew at Dagger, guys like Eric Hammond, who I worked alongside, and then Logan Kendricks now, who's an incredible paddler in his own right, and it's like super stoked to see his paddling and his commitment to it. But he's a great engineer as well. So his ability to sort of have a paddling background, but then understand how things are made and how they can be made and what's needed. I think that would be a sort of a good grounding. But just also be open to immersing yourself in it as well. There's no substitute to just being. If it's paddling that you want to sort of contribute to, is just immerse yourself in. You don't have to be the best paddler, but you have to be prepared to sort of jump in and listen and understand, and just go all in on it and just be stoked for it.
That's great, and that's good advice for just about anything, right? Go all in and be stoked.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, but I suppose the one thing you could add to that, especially if you're wanting to do sort of boat and sort of hull design, is actually looking at some sort of naval architecture understanding. And I've sort of done that sort of theoretically, just looking at some studies and books, and it only applies to a certain extent, but there are things there that can certainly help take some of the guesswork out of it. Certainly when it comes to more of a touring or a recreational product, when you're working with, less in whitewater market, whitewater products where you've got sort of flow coming from some different angles, but understanding sort of fluid and flow dynamics is pretty intriguing to me, and I don't know enough, but I know enough to be dangerous again, so it's useful.
Are you ready to run some rapids with me?
Yeah, let's do it. It's been a while, but yeah. Well,
it has been a while. Yeah. Hopefully it's going to be soon. But,
absolutely. Let's make that happen.
So the rapid fire. This is a Mount Rushmore. Now you've been in the United States long enough. You know what Mount Rushmore is. Some of my friends.
I've heard of this place. I've never seen it. Yeah.
I've always seen it in pictures, but I love the concept of any kind of list or ranking. One of my friends at work today, we did our Mount Rushmore of all the baseball players for every position, just to kill some time.
Yeah.
So Mount Rushmore.
No, it's 4, right? Mount Rushmore.
4, but you can go 3 to 5. I'll give you some flexibility.
Well, it might be 5 eventually.
I'm going to throw out a topic of kayaking, and you got to give me your Mount Rushmore.
Okay.
All right. So, this first question, I've never done it like this. I'm going to do it a 2-parter.
Oh.
This is kayak designs of all time. And I want your Mount Rushmore of your designs, and then I want a separate Mount Rushmore of boats that you did not have any influence in.
Oh gosh, wow. Which one do I start with? Let me start with the boats I didn't have involvement in.
Okay.
One of them is a Dagger boat, and I suppose I almost feel obliged to say this. Maybe everyone else has said it, but the RPM. I mean, it's just. Yeah,
it's low-hanging fruit. Right?
It almost seems cliche saying it because it's sort of like it's an easy out, but yeah, it did so much for so many people, and pretty cool product. I guess it's sort of a personal thing, but not at all involved in it. But it's a boat that sort of I had experience in. The Piranha stunt bat. I guess it would have been going back 90s, 1993-ish or so. I maybe got into one of those, and I remember just the first time feeling it on a wave, and just this sort of like it felt sort of just aggressive and dynamic, and the Piranha stunt bat was like a pretty cool one. The Perception Super Sport, and I say that because I think that's the first boat I sort of intentionally cartwheeled. I think I'd done some unintentional in sort of some bigger older boats. I think I maybe jumped in a crossfire one time and suddenly was just like hurtling through the air, out of control, not really cartwheeling, but maybe just getting tumbled. But yeah, the Super Sport, and then P&H Surfer, fiberglass boat. I've got one of them back in the UK, but that thing, flat planing hull. That thing, I don't even know the date of that, but it's amazing. It's just really cool, sort of seeing that thing spin down a wave, but then they have big fins on them as well. Yeah, the one I've got is like lots of glitter as well, so that adds to the appeal.
Nice. All right, so what about your designs? And this is like a parent picking their favorite child, you know.
Yeah. This is tricky, I suppose. And for some reason, they're sort of, the designs that have done well. I'm sure that's great, but also just designs of projects that have been sort of really enjoyable to work on and rewarding. And I think probably one of those would have to be the green boat. This collaboration on that with the people I mentioned, was particularly with Pat, and just like the vision he had and sort of coming forward with that. And that was pretty cool. And also actually getting that going from just a concept and a team project to then going into production. I remember going to the finance guy at Confluence then, and he was just like, is this? It was right before Christmas, and he was just like, "Is this the right thing to do?" And I was like, "It's not always about the right thing. It's basically." He said it's a smart decision. That's right, and I was like, "It's not a smart decision. It's just the right thing to do." And then convincing them, because we probably gone on about it so long to let us do that boat. So the green boat certainly. The rewind's been a nice one. It's just sort of stood up well in the lineup for us. It was a really enjoyable project to work on, and so that one's been a good project. So sticking with longboats, sort of seeing what the Vanguard's been able to do, and sort of again taking that longboat and sort of opening it up again, and I think sort of seeing what they're doing in things like the little white race that just happened in the Pacific Northwest. It was never a longboat territory, and now it's kind of the longboat spot with the sort of green sort of altering and changing. Right. So that's been pretty cool. God, I'm trying to think of others. The Mamba as well. The second generation of Dagger Mamba that we did. Just sort of figuring out sort of sizing, doing it for a really big boat, and then sort of seeing sort of the team take that boat and sort of put it through some really big water and some big missions. Sort of like Tyler Bratt and Rush taking that down the Nile, and then I think it was maybe Ben Ma running Site Z for the first time in the large Mambo was like pretty cool to see that. But it just had such a broad appeal for us, that boat. So that was a cool one. And again, just really like working with the team and just getting their input on it. And
very cool. What about rivers of all time?
I'm probably sort of saying the same thing over, but the green's got to be up there for me, sort of in the backyard, and in sort of as it was, and even now I think it's just we're going to see that sort of green sort of it's coming back to life, so to speak, and whatever happens with sort of down releases, but it was just so many sort of joyous moments out there because it was just always available, always accessible, and just some great times. I guess sticking in the southeast as well, one that sort of really stood out early on, sort of being here, was the Overflow Creek, sort of South Carolina Georgia border, running into Chattooga, and the Chattooga would be in there as well. And actually, with a friend Corey, we sort of linked the two together one time, did Overflow all the way through the Chattooga, which was pretty cool. But Overflow is just like beautiful sort of rhododendron tunnels, clear water, and that's a really nice one. Just picking something from the other side of the pond is like I mentioned the sort of the tidal rapids, the sort of the bitches off the West Wales coast there, and actually that coastline in general, just amazing coastline, sort of rugged, rocky, and some pretty intimidating places in the sort of the wrong conditions where you've got wind against tide. But that's a pretty cool spot too.
What about countries to paddle in?
I've got to say my homeland back in Wales. I mean, it's you've got to sort of want the paddling there. It rains a lot, but you've got to be sort of ready to go when the rivers are going, and the weather's always not the nicest. But yeah, it's pretty cool. The US in general, but then sort of narrow it down the southeast. I mean, just the variety of paddling in the US, and I've barely scratched the surface, I have to say. But it's there's just so much good paddling here. The small experience I've had with Ecuador, I think just value for paddling, just the accessibility, which is like it's just available, and you can kind of go sort of quick missions or just like epic missions, which I've never got to do that, but just seeing the stuff that people dig into in places like Ecuador, and it's just really well set up for it. And then Nepal. Nepal's just like incredible country, amazing people, culture, and paddling. It's long overdue to go back there. That's a pretty cool place.
Kayakers of all time.
Oof. Wow. Oh, how do you narrow that down?
Well, however you want to.
Yeah.
Some people have done like their best, their friends. Some people have done like all women. Like however you want to, this is your Mount Rushmore.
Yeah. And obviously, I guess to do that, you sort of look at who's done what in the past, but it'd be nice to look to the future as well. But no particular order. I mean, you kind of rattle through them. You've got Pat Keller, I think, is just smoothness. He's sort of a Jedi. His ability to sort of tap into flow and sort of see water in a different way, I feel like, and just incredible. Andrew Holcomb for smoothness, just like smoothest, most sort of confidence-inspiring paddler out there. Theo Berman, just watching Theo just huck himself off stuff and just like a rag doll, but controlled.
Always coming out the bottom.
But yeah, he's pretty exceptional.
And an underrated freestyle paddler. He was
I remember being in a heat in here with him at the pre-worlds in Graz in Austria. He was in the heat I was in. We were having a real giggle, partly because of who was commentating at the time, and just like making everyone sort of laugh and not taking it too seriously. But and it was the year they had like a super trashy hole. But Theo and I were but he was good freestyle as well. I guess I'd have to say Adrian Levconnect as well. I think just in terms of tenacity and just someone who's just like determined and just sort of, never want to get left behind, and just dogged determination to sort of and sort of paddle with a group of guys a lot here in the southeast back when she was sort of made the move and sort of was really stepping up in her paddling. I suppose also, I guess. You've got to put Dane Jackson in there. It's like,
well, sure.
But maybe Dane. It's
an a category of his own.
Yeah, too much of an obvious one. And I'd like to say, sort of looking to the future, like paddlers who are the hopes of all times, like someone like Heidi Walsh, I think, sort of coming up, and just like I think the potential there is like really incredible, and just sort of her sort of. Again, smoothness and style and confidence, and just sort of does it with a sort of, clear head on her shoulders, and I think for the future. Let's hope so. But that's maybe not someone who's she's done incredible things already, but looking to the future.
For sure. Final flow. This is where the river gods come down and they say, Snowy, you've had a good run. But this is the last time you'll ever be in a kayak. Bad news. Good news is you get to be any age you want. You get to be in any boat you want. You get to be on any river you want. And you get to pick your crew. Who you got?
Wow. That's no pressure on that question. That's a really tough one to narrow down. I don't think age matters. It's like I'll just be, as long as I'm still able to kayak and even if you carry me to the river and put me in a boat, probably some sort of cruisy boat, sort of just making sort of downriver flow, and just something, maybe a longboat, just like sort of cruising edge to edge and flowing downriver. And I guess with that, trying to do it on like a multi-day trip, which probably ends up going out west, since I said the sort of States has got everything, and something, I guess from some previous experiences, but like the sea session to the South Fork of the Salmon, just because the camps on that are just amazing, and just have some great experiences there. Or possibly something in Nepal, just multi-day, so you can just kind of stay away from civilization for a while and camp out under the stars, sit around a campfire and sort of tell stories with, It'd be a list. Yeah, Corey Volt, my brother. Always enjoyed paddling with my brother. Would be really stoked to have my dad there as well. He got us into paddling. He still paddles a bit to this day at 84.
Wow.
But still going. Yeah, Andrew Holcomb, Anna Levesque, Adrian, Chris Gratmans. I think people are sort of just have great times on the river. Shane Benedict, Evan Stafford, Scott Byers. Yeah, the list could go on. It'd be sort of too hard to mention everyone, but yeah, just the people, the place, and everything else can kind of fall in. But just a long list of people would be great.
Well, Snowy, thanks so much for being on the show, and thanks for everything you've contributed to paddle sports and you've meant to me. And I appreciated our friendship, even though it's been mostly remote social media over the last 20 years. But hopefully, going forward, that's going to be more of an in-person thing.
Yeah, hopefully so, Brad. Let's definitely get on the river together. That's why we all do it, right? So days on the river in whatever form. But yeah, thanks for having me. I enjoyed chatting and reminiscing and hopefully still more great days and new product to come. So yeah, thanks very much for the time.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for being here.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of B-Flow Sessions, where we explore how paddlers find their flow on the water and in life. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow the show, leave a rating, or share it with a friend. It truly helps us grow the community. And a huge thank you to Pucon Kayak Retreat for sponsoring today's episode. If you're ready for a world-class Chilean whitewater adventure, email me at bflowkayak@gmail.com and I'll help you get dialed in. Until next time, keep finding your flow.